But in the online space of buying websites and growing them and building them with what you know now, like for somebody starting out, what sort of advice would you tell yourself if you were in their position? Especially like you said, it can be a bit of a wild west, especially on these other marketplaces where things aren't validated and vetted, and also a wild west in the space of, and it's getting better. Things are getting ironed out, but still, like, there's so much junky information about how to grow sites, content sites, and all that sort of stuff. What would you tell yourself after everything you've learned up in this spot if you had to start out again?
hmm Yeah, and I get a question a lot from people about whether they should buy a site or build one from scratch. That's
Mm,
sort of the age-old question. Um, and I honestly, if I were to be starting over myself, I would buy a website. Um, and if I were new to the industry, didn't have a ton of knowledge in the space, I probably would recommend buying a smaller content website. Right. I don't know what that number is, but something that people can afford. If that's a site that's making $500 a month, that is a great place to start and sort of get your feet wet, to learn the industry, because I've always found that there is no better teacher than experience,
mm,
and in particular from the SEO, building a website business. Um, you can read all the blogs, you can listen to Jaryd's podcast, you can listen to my podcast all day long,
yeah.
but it isn't until you dive in and actually start optimizing a website and building internal links and uploading images and figuring out how to do hosting. And there's all these little questions that once you do it hands on the first time, you just learn a ton. And so if you have sort of a playground, right, of a site that it's already making money, and if you screw it up, it's not the end of the world, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the disadvantage. If you're to go buy a site that's making $10,000 a month and it's your first try ever, like that would be really bad if you tanked it because you did something stupid just because you didn't know.
Mm,
Um, but having a smaller site, you kind of got this test ground where you can test ideas out and you can learn. And it might take you 6 months or 12 months to kind of wrap your head around, why is this site making money? Why is it ranking in Google? Why is it doing so well? But you'll have really sped up your education process over time. I mean, it took me several years, let me just say several years, before I really understood SEO and building websites, right? Like I built my first site in 2005. It wasn't until 2011 that I was able to quit my job, right? So 6 years of
mm.
sort of learning, and I basically I never had any websites making any money for the first 2 or 3 years, right? I think I would have probably sped up that education process if I had something that actually was ranking in Google and making money from day one. So that would be my advice there. But I'm happy to answer any more specifics if I
I'd
missed
love
any
to
points of
just
that question.
No,
Yeah.
I just love to talk on that because it's such a good discussion to have, especially for somebody that's just like, all right, what do I actually do here? Like, what's the first step? And I love your approach, and this is what I say to my clients who do jump in and they actually learn all the programs and all the trainings and all the stuff that I have in my community. I say to them, guys, like, look, you can't just learn the theory, even if it is like really good packaged up in a beautiful thing, for you to go away and consume, and it's actually going to help you get the results. Same with like listening to my podcast or your podcast or reading blogs and all that sort of stuff. I tell everyone that does join the community, to know and not do is to not know, which means you can learn all the theory, but if you don't actually get in and take action, then you're not going to know how to do it. It's like you could learn the theory of like, all right, here's a bike. I'm going to learn how to ride a bike in theory, but you still can't actually do it. You don't know how to do it until you get on the bike and start riding it. And there's other quotes like, the best way to learn business is to be in business. And I hands down agree with all of it, because it's taking the action and doing it. You do make mistakes and you learn from them a lot quicker. And I think it's so important to start out with a site. Yeah. making $500 a month, uh, and growing from there. And also for me, I went through the same phase as you, Spencer, in my life, is starting sites that I just really sucked at. Like, I remember travel blogging, like in 2013, I typed into Google how to travel the world and make money online. That's the first step that I took. And I started travel blogging because that's what Google told me to do, basically.
Yeah.
And I just followed that process and went around and around in circles, learning a bit as I went until my aha moment was 90% of startups fail. And then the same as you, like I'm sure that you would have seen your income grow with much less work when you started buying sites. Yeah.
Right. Right. And the other, point to buying a site that's really great is that it's, in my opinion, it's a lot easier to take a site from 500 to 1,000 or even $2,000 a month in earnings than it is to go from 0 to 500.
Yeah.
Right. It really is just so much easier to take something, like you said, again, 90% of businesses fail. The number's probably higher for number of websites that
That's
fail,
so true.
right? That are started from scratch. And so it really is easier to take something from 500 to, much larger. And so I think, probably easier, uh, and more likely that it's going to continue to make money or grow than, starting something from zero.